We have a lot to understand about the universe, the solar system where we live in. And it has been humankind's quest from the beginning to know about it more and more. This is one step, but that is not the end. It's only the beginning.
Koppali Radhakrishnan, the chairman of the India Space Research Organisation, speaking on a rather special day. It's almost around now. Oh no, it'll be soon. It's about half an hour away, just after 8 p.m. Australian Summer Eastern Time, 2:38 p.m. local time in India. India will launch its first spacecraft into orbit around Mars. Of the 51 missions to Mars launched around the world, only 21 have been successful. So why would India try its luck now? Why would it do this thing? I'm joined by Dr. Rajeswari Rajagopalan, who's a Senior Fellow in Security Studies at the Observer Research Foundation think tank in New Delhi. Doctor, welcome.
Thank you very much. Happy to be part of your program.
Why does India want to send a spacecraft to Mars?
Yes, there have been interesting questions raised on India's Mars mission, both the timing and why India needs to do when there are so many problems within India on poverty issues, developmental issues, infrastructure problems. I think this has been a overly debated subject in a sense. I would start by saying that India does not enjoy a benign neighborhood, and therefore India has had to calculate what's going on in Asia, particularly in the Indian neighborhood. Both on its east and west, there has been a lot of security issues, and these have been important factors for directing, in a sense, India's space program. But more precisely, I think one of the crucial developments that, in a sense, gave some kind of a push to India's space program has been the Chinese anti-satellite test in January 2007. In fact, the Chinese ASAT test of 2007 was a sort of wake-up call to India of the kind of security threats that exist even in the outer space domain. So, in a sense, soon after the test, I think from then onwards, there has been a sort of rethinking. It kind of forced upon India a reevaluation of its own policy approach on in the space realm. More precisely, it has actually created even a kind of a pressure point for India to develop an Indian ASAT capability, anti-satellite capability.
So there's a real sense of a sort of good old-fashioned Cold War space race about this.
Yes, in a sense, because for a long time, at least until 2007 January, India had given up these kind of space ambitions. India had never caught on with these kind of ambitions to go to moon or do this interplanetary missions and so on and so forth. But January 2007, in a sense, was sort of, like I said, wake-up call for India. And it also kind of illustrated immediately as to what kind of security challenges that exist in India. In terms of the protection of its own satellites is an immediate thing. Because until then, India had was of the view that these are issues of the big powers, the US, USSR, and the Russians, and so on and so forth. This is not something that India or the Asian countries are going to be looking at, because India's space program started as a civilian space program, and it continued well into until very recently as an entirely civilian-based program with huge utility and functions in the social, economic, and the developmental on development side. But 2007, it kind of forced upon India a sort of fresh rethinking on what it should be doing to protect its own satellites, because in addition to the huge financial stake, that is about $37 billion if you were to calculate the ground-based infrastructure as well as the services services attached to outer space domain, it's a huge amount that you're talking about. So in addition to the financial stake that India has in terms of protecting these outer space assets, India also has concerns because this has huge impact on India's social and economic growth story. So this has really created...
As I say, it's in all that context a fairly risky endeavour. I mean, just 21 out of the 51 missions launched to Mars by
Yes,
various countries have been successful. So this is a high-risk strategy.
Yes, that is true. It is in fact a very complicated, very complex mission that India has undertaken, and at the budget which is undertaken, because India, unlike NASA, for instance, which does several rounds of tests before actually it does the launch, India has been doing only simulation exercises to verify the success rate of a launch, in a sense. So it is actually at one of the cheapest missions that India has undertaken, and in the world, the world has seen of a Mars mission at about $70 million. That's one of the cheapest Mars missions that you can think about, and especially in the face of more advanced countries like China and Japan having made attempt at Mars mission, and the Chinese, for instance, having failed in November 2011 on a mission in which they were piggybacking on Russian Mars orbiter, but again, it did not really leave the Earth's orbit, and that was a failure, and it has been at least temporarily abandoned for the time being. I'm sure the Chinese are working on it, and this is something that they would want to get off the ground, in a sense. So
now, an economically, frugal mission as far as missions to Mars are concerned, but it's still a vast amount of expense. I wonder, Doctor, what the domestic response within India is to that amount of money going towards something like a mission to Mars, given the amount of poverty that exists in the country.
Yes, at some sense, there is a smaller group of smaller minority of the population that is kind of questioned when in the face of when India has so many problems, poverty alleviation, that should have been a major agenda, and so on and so forth, and why India is spending. But I think the technology demonstration because this is a huge technology demonstration, because given the complexity of the mission that it is undertaking today, it is a huge thing if India succeeds in this mission. And the technology demonstration that could accrue India a kind of a seat at the high table to sit and talk about space security issues, space security code, and any sort of arms control measures that might come about tomorrow. India will have, because that's at the end of the day, that's a given reality that big powers who have capabilities will come about dictating terms to the world. So India, again, does not want to be because India does have a sound scientific and technological base, and so why not then do this technology demonstration, because if it is going to be beneficial to India in directly or indirect means. Direct means it's not going to be immediately, it's not like the other satellite programs space programs that India will actually see benefit in terms of socio-economic growth rate, but indirectly it has a economic impact as well. When you look at potentially if India is able to offer launch services for other countries. India has been doing this launch services for other countries, including Brazil and so on and so forth. But proving the Mars mission would take India a notch, several notches higher. And I think the importance of technology demonstration is as important as the economic and social causes, in a sense.
Well, with all those factors, it's just 30 minutes away, and it's whatever else. Always a great adventure. Dr. Rajeswari Rajagopalan, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Yep, thank you very much. Happy to have you and be on board.
Dr. Rajagopalan is a senior fellow in security studies at the Observer Research Foundation think tank in New Delhi. As we say, that Indian mission to Mars, half an hour away. Talking tech next. The Drawing Room 2 coming up in our final half hour here on RN Drive. Tonight, Rod Quantock, one of the senior fellows of Melbourne's comedy scene, and Dr. Matthew Klugman, a new book looking at an extraordinary incident in Australian football. We'll talk football, we'll talk race, we'll talk laughter. All those things and more coming up in The Drawing Room. It's 7:30 on RN Drive.